So about 2 years ago, I made a 30-minute video called Ultimate Guide to Men's Hair Types, where I went over sort of the science behind each of the 5 characteristics that determine your hair type. Now, it was really long-winded, probably boring, maybe you dozed off. There was like a whole PDF attached to it. It sort of broke down hair type. Now, in this long-winded video, I think while it was helpful for a lot of people, it also made figuring out your hair type a little bit more confusing, because I've still seen people in my Maynard Mains community, which is a free app you can download in the App Store and the Google Play Store. It's also a Facebook group, saying that they can't quite figure out what their hair type is. So this video is going to be an attempt to give that same information, but make it sound less like a lecture. Bueller, 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 and hopefully clear up any confusion, so by the end of this video you'll have no trouble figuring out your hair type. So the 5 elements that I mentioned were curl pattern, hair texture, hair density, hair porosity, and scalp moisture levels. I'm gonna add one more to this list, and then I'm gonna make a distinction. The last element I'm gonna add is elasticity, which isn't technically part of your hair type, but let me explain. It's gonna help these things make a lot of sense. Let's break down your hair overarching into 2 categories. We're gonna have hair type, and we're gonna have hair condition. Now, hair type is typically determined by your genetics. Then we have your hair condition, which is mainly influenced by external factors, things like heat, chemical treatments, diet, lifestyle, pollution, the sun. You know, it can change day to day based on how you care for your hair. There's also this sort of gray area where the type and condition kind of merge. Left side, we have your genetic hair type, which are things like your curl pattern, your hair texture, and your density. And the right side, we have your hair's condition. The main one that falls into this side is your elasticity, because it can tell us a lot about the condition of your hair. And then in the middle, where this Venn diagram intersects, we have the parts of your hair that can be affected by both genetics and outside forces. So porosity and scalp moisture levels fall into this category. Now, at this point, you might be saying, well, can't your scalp density be affected by external factors? Like, you can lose hair, right? You can lose hair from stress or from diet or from a hereditary trait. And while that's true, I actually still have it on the genetic side, because you can't make it better than your genetic limit, right? So if you genetically have medium density hair, you can't add more follicles per square inch on your head. But if you start shedding from stress or from diet or something, then you can get back up to your genetic limit by figuring out what caused it. That's why it stays on the genetic side. Whereas with elasticity, if your hair is breaking when you stretch it, you can fix the issue and you can make the condition better. So left side is what you use to shop for products at a baseline, meaning when your hair is in great condition, the shampoo and the conditioner, possibly the styling products, depending on your curl pattern that you buy, will be based on the genetic side, the curl pattern, the texture, and the density. And then the middle and on the right side is what you will tweak and alter to get your hair's condition back to the right place. So it's also important to note that condition can change on different areas of your head, right? Your ends can be in poor condition while your roots and your midpoints are in great condition. And I think this is where a lot of confusion starts to come into play regarding hair type. Maybe it seems like your hair changes from day to day and you can't pinpoint exactly what your hair type is, when in reality, it's your condition that's changing. Let's go over each one of these from the inside out, and you will have a really good idea of what your hair type is, what your hair condition is, and how to care for your hair overall. So starting in the middle of this Venn diagram, porosity. I think porosity is a big point of confusion for a lot of people. In a nutshell, it's your hair's ability to absorb and retain moisture, and it's measured by how tight or loose your cuticle is. Now, your cuticle is the outer protective layer of scales that protects the cortex, which holds your keratin and your nutrients, and it keeps your hair strong. When you wet your hair, your cortex swells, and this raises your cuticle. So naturally, when you add product, your cortex is gonna absorb the stuff it needs to replenish things like protein, amino acids, things like that. And then when your hair dries, your cuticle layer lays back down and holds all that stuff in that you just conditioned your hair with. And a good conditioner will also help to seal the cuticle shut. If you have low porosity hair, the cuticle doesn't want to accept that product. It's really tight. But with enough time and the right lightweight products, you can seep under those cuticles and get your hair to accept it. After that, it holds onto it really, really well. So people with low porosity hair, their hair always looks shiny, right? Because the light reflects off the really tight and flat cuticle. Now, medium porosity is kind of in the middle. The cuticle isn't too tight, it's not too loose, it accepts and holds product very well, and your hair typically looks healthy most of the time. Now, high porosity cuticles are raised and damaged, and your hair will typically look dry and frizzy because even though it can accept product and nutrients really well, it doesn't hold on to them. So typically high porosity is where the hair condition comes into play. That's why it's in the middle of the Venn diagram. So most people are either low or medium genetically, and if you're high porosity, it can be genetic, but it's most likely due to external factors, things like chemical treatments or heat damage or bleaching, or just caring for your hair improperly for many, many months on end. You can also have high porosity only on the ends of your hair where you have medium or low in other areas. In my previous video, to find your porosity, I recommended wetting it, seeing how long it took before your hair absorbed water. And I also recommended timing how long it takes to dry. I don't think that's the best method or the most accurate method anymore to find your true porosity because, you can change a variable, right? The length of your hair can change and all of a sudden your timing changes. Your hair gets wet quicker and it dries faster because your hair is shorter versus longer. Now I recommend a visual and a touch test. So visually, you want to ask yourself, how does my hair look when it's dry and laying naturally without any product, right? Is it flat and shiny or is it dry and frizzy? And I don't mean flat like no volume. I mean like, is the cuticle flat? And then pair those answers with a touch test. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a little bit of hair, but the best thing to do is to take hair from your temples, your crown, and your nape, and you're going to put them all together, and you're gonna slide your finger from tip to root. And you're basically feeling for how smooth or rough it is. So if it feels rough to the touch, plus your hair looks dry and frizzy, chances are it's high porosity and something in your condition you need to fix. If it feels smooth and your hair looks shiny and it has trouble accepting, water and moisture and product, typically you will have low porosity hair. And if your finger slides smoothly and it doesn't look super shiny or super dull, it's right there in the middle, you have medium porosity. Now I think this test is more accurate because you actually have your hands on your hair and you are feeling the cuticle directly to see if it is raised or flat. Moving on to the other middle category, your scalp moisture levels. A greasy scalp can be caused by overactive sebaceous glands, which are genetic, or it could be caused by the wrong shampoo, or washing too often, or not enough, or eating greasy foods. You see external factors or genetics. That's why it's in the middle. To figure out your scalp moisture levels, see how quickly it takes your scalp to become greasy after you shampoo. If it's greasy in 24 hours, try changing something. If it takes 3 to 5 days before your sebum builds up after you're shampooing, I'd say you have a pretty balanced scalp. Now, if immediately after shampooing your scalp feels tight or it feels dry and it's accompanied by dusty white flakes or it itches, then I'd say that you have a dry scalp and you should look into moisturizing products. Let's jump over to the right side of this chart to elasticity. To test this, you're just gonna take one strand of hair and you're gonna pull on it a little bit. Now, if it bounces back into place, it's a balanced elasticity. If you pull on it about 25% and it snaps, it's probably too dry, it needs some hydration, and if it pulls and it doesn't break or it doesn't snap back, it just kind of stays there, chances are you need some strengthening products or there's too much buildup on your hair and it's too heavy. You're going to be due for a really good reset, like a clarifying reset. I have a whole other video on elasticity. I'll link to it in the description if you want to learn more about that. Let's jump over to the left side of this chart where we talk about the genetic side, starting with curl pattern. Now there's a lot of confusion around curl pattern because there's several hair typing charts out there. For simplicity's sake, I just followed the one that shows type 1 to 4C. Type 1 is straight hair. Type 2A is slight S waves, 2B is a little S-ier, and then 2C is the S-iest, right? I know there's some charts that have 1B and 1C added to take into account minimal waves on straight hair. But for simplicity's sake, if I were to take 1A, 1B, and 1C, I would just still categorize it as type 1 without much distinction. The reason is because if you're type 1, even with very minimal curve, chances are your hair routine is not gonna change much, whether you're 1A, 1B, or 1C. Type 3, I like to think about it as coily curls, right? This is the range where you have the loose C shapes. and it goes from 3A to 3C all the way to a tight C shape. And type 4 is your coily coils. So with the exception of 4B, which follows like a Z pattern, your 4A and 4C are very, very tight coils. Now, I'm not a curly hair expert. I'm not gonna act like I know exactly what to tell you to do for type 3 and 4 hair. I can tell you general things, like your curls need a lot of hydration and moisture. Probably don't wanna brush it when it's dry, but when it's wet, definitely use a curl cream. But for more in-depth tutorials and regimens, I would recommend you follow curly hair channels like Manes by Mel or Jawoon Ahmad for curly hair care. So the easiest way to see your natural curl pattern is wash and condition your hair and let it air dry naturally. And what you see when it's completely dry is gonna be your natural hair type. Now this is important to know because each curl pattern requires different routines. And I'm not gonna go into each one of the routines in this video, but that is the best way to figure out what your natural curl pattern is. So next we have hair texture, which is defined as fine, medium, and coarse. To figure out what your hair texture is, you want to take one strand of hair in your hand and you want to roll that strand between your fingers and roll it between your fingers. Now, if it's impossible to track, like you can't feel it, like I can't feel this at all. I have no idea where it is in my fingers. And it might have even fallen. That's how fine my hair is. But if it's impossible to track, like you can't feel it, you probably have fine textured hair. If you can kind of track it like a thread, it's medium texture. And if you can easily track it in your fingers, like it feels like a thin wire, you have coarse hair. Now just to give you an example, I have fine hair, my wife has coarse hair, and you can just look at them both visually next to each other. My wife's hair is visibly thicker than mine. So finally we have density. This is the amount of hair per square inch on your head. When someone says,
"Man, my hair is so thin,"
they're usually referring to the overall density of their hair. So to measure this part, you're just going to sort of part your hair in a couple different places. Part it down the middle, part it on the right side, part it on the left, and see how much of your scalp is visible when you're looking at that part. And I'm not talking about looking directly at the line that is parted, because you can obviously see your scalp line, but I mean look around it, right? Can you see your scalp to the left and right of the part? If you can't see it at all, it's definitely thick density. If you can kind of see it, it's probably medium, and if it's very visible, then that's a thin density. So how do you put all this together to care for your hair? I like to look at it from a holistic point of view, meaning all of it together. So my hair type, 2A, 2B curl pattern, sort of mixed, fine textured, thick density, balanced scalp, medium porosity. And my hair elasticity is fine, it is good. Since I know that the condition of my hair is in decent shape, I'm gonna shop based on my curl pattern, my texture, my density. Fine wavy hair requires volumizing, strengthening, and wave defining products. I don't wanna weigh it down, so I shop lightweight. I look for products that say volumizing or thickening. I look for curl creams that are for fine, textured, lightweight hair. If you have coarse hair and thick density and a dry scalp and high porosity and low elasticity, you should focus on fixing the condition of your hair first. Now, if my hair is in really bad condition, honestly, I just make an appointment with my stylist to fix it. I don't try to do all of that on my own because they have the best products to seal and heal your cuticle, salon grade that only salons can buy. And once your condition is fixed, then you can focus buying products for your hair type. Coarse, thick hair, for example, needs moisture and heavier products to tame a lot of that volume. So you shop for products that say like hydrating or smoothing. You don't want to shop for products that are volumizing because you already have volume. So something like the JVN hydrating line or the Odell smoothing line. So this is how I approach the vision to figuring out the best products for your hair type and your hair's condition. Step one is to make sure that your hair condition checks off all the positive boxes. Your elasticity is good, your porosity is back to what your genetics are, and then your scalp moisture is balanced. And then you can start shopping for your texture and your density and your curl pattern. And by the way, I have a free hair type quiz in my app, Maynard Manes. You can download it, take it, it's free. We also offer one-on-one virtual consultations with master stylists. So that way you can get all of your questions answered from a pro. All of that is linked in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.